Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Good morning, everyone. Hi. Good morning. How are you doing? Yeah. Hi. I'm here to intro our great Courtney Elmer here, but let me tell you first the beginning of a love story. At PodFirst earlier this year, we didn't even know about Courtney, but she was already on stage talking about podcast SEO and talking about OSHA. And let me tell you that she was amazing. Everyone kept telling us, you two have to meet. And when it finally happened, it was obvious, the perfect match between our tech and a true mastermind of podcast SEO. And also, in 15 years of marketing, I've met a lot of smart people, but Courtney is one in a million. She's also entrepreneur, mother, podcast host, and today she's here to share her knowledge with us, and that's a rare gift. So let's show her our gratitude and give her a big and warm applause for Courtney Elmer, please.
That was such an amazing intro. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. Wow, you're hired. You can intro me anytime. That was amazing. Thank you. Truly. It means a lot to me because podcast SEO is one of those things that I love to nerd out on. And until recently, not many people knew about it. So I'm really glad that all of you are here today to learn more about this. And what I invite you to do for this talk this morning, I just want you to relax. And I want you to take it in. I know the tendency is to want to jot notes and take notes and get it all down, but I'm going to give you the slides at the end, and I am going to give you a literal step-by-step roadmap to help you implement everything that I'm teaching. You can take it home. You can knock this strategy out in a morning and apply it to your podcast. Sounds good? Give me a thumbs up. Yes? Is everyone awake this morning? Okay, all right. We're kind of halfway there. All right, let's get rolling. You know, for years, podcasters have thought that SEO, that's for blogs. That's for websites. That's not for podcasts. That's not for me. But recently, podcast SEO has become one of the top ways to get new listeners to discover your show. And in my opinion, it is still currently one of the most overlooked growth levers out there that we have for growing a podcast, particularly if you are a niche podcast, particularly if you are an independent podcaster who is bootstrapping this, who is just trying to get your message out there and get your name known. The reality is, though, that if your podcast is not showing up in search results, then you are invisible to your listeners. And your competitors are showing up in those results and capturing those listeners that you're missing out on. And I don't want that for you. So in case we haven't had a chance to meet during the course of this week, I'm Courtney Elmer. I'm the CEO and founder of PodLaunch. And we work with creators and podcasters all around the world to help them rank their shows, to learn the psychology that goes into building a binge-worthy top podcast, understanding human behavior, what drives someone to click play, what drives someone to keep listening, what makes someone want to come back, knowing what these triggers are and applying them to your show to keep your listeners engaged and build that listener base and build that listener loyalty. Another fun fact about me, I am a judge for the Webby Awards. You might have heard about these. These are like the Grammys of the internet. It's really fun to be behind the scenes, looking at a lot of these top podcasts and podcasts put out by the brands that you see here and seeing what they're doing well and seeing what they're not doing so well and learning how to distill that into applicable information that I could literally hand you to apply to your podcast. And of course, I wouldn't be teaching podcasting if I didn't have a podcast of my own, if I wasn't here in the trenches with you. Insider Secrets to a Top 100 Podcast is my show where we take over 15,000 hours of study into the psychology of what makes listeners click, what makes listeners engage, what keeps them listening, and that we literally hand you on your show to apply to your own podcast. You know, back in 2005, it's funny, if you pull up this New York Times article, they're talking about podcasts. Podcasts are making news, but they're not making the best headlines. Someone did an article here, you know, podcast, it's this new podium, and look, it's this little radio show that people are creating on the cheap. Should I be offended by that? I don't know. Are you offended by that? I'm a little somewhat offended by that. Just fast forward 20 years later. Now it's like, look, Mom, my little radio show, it made it. We actually made it. We are here. People know what podcasts are, and now with so many podcasts to choose from, the question that needs to be top of mind for you is how am I going to compete? How am I going to compete with these top shows, with these huge budgets that I don't have, This audience is that I don't have, the celebrity clout that I might not have. How am I going to compete with them? The answer? All right, this is the test to see if everyone's awake. Repeat after me. Podcast SEO. Oh, we can do better, guys. Podcast SEO. Okay, I think we are about 80% awake now. Good. All right, we're going to keep rolling. So the beautiful thing about this, podcast SEO or PSO, is that you don't need a background in SEO. You don't need a background in tech. You don't need to know anything about keywords other than what is your listener searching for and how can I plug those keywords into my podcast and use those to help listeners find me. And in case you're not convinced yet, if you've been to any of my talks this week, I've been harping on this, podcast SEO is now one of the top ways that listeners are discovering podcasts. It accounts for over 54% of the way that listeners find shows, both inside the app and Google. I cannot tell you, I've been podcasting for over 5 years now, and within the last 18 months, I've had more people tell me, well, I found your show in a Google search. And I stumbled across and I found your show, and I went onto your blog, and then there was your podcast, and now I listen to your podcast. Or I was just looking in the app, and your podcast popped up, and now I've binged your show, and I've listened to every single episode. And that has become the thing that I've heard from more and more people over word of mouth, over, hey, we saw you in the charts, or over, I heard you speak somewhere on someone else's podcast. It's search. And so think of the top 5 of search when you open up Apple, you open up Spotify, you type whatever keyword you type into that search bar. This is like landing on page 1 of Google in podcast world. That top 5 right there, if you know old school marketing speak, it's above the fold. So this is before people scroll. Now, what does that mean? If we think in terms of Google, does anyone scroll past page 1 of Google anymore? No, in fact, we all go to ChatGPT and ask our questions now. So page 1 of Google gives you instant credibility. If you're at the top of those search results, people are not going to go searching because Google has gotten so good at matching what you're looking for, that listener intent or that searcher's intent. And the same is true here, where with someone, we're conditioned to think that the top shows that appear here, the top episodes, the top results that we see in these search results, well, this must be credible. This must be legit. All right, pretty much what I'm going to be looking for should be here. We're conditioned to think. We might scroll once, but most people are busy. They're not going to scroll more than once. So we want your show showing up in the top 5 here. Now, I'm going to give you the process for doing it. Who wants to be in the top 5? Okay, raise those hands higher. Yes, I want to be in the top 5. Tell me. Okay, all right, guys, we're backtracking now. We're only about 60% awake. Okay. All right, the process. And if you want to take a picture of this, you're welcome to, but again, I'm going to hand you these slides, all right? Number 1, you're going to analyze your competition. Number 2, you're going to build your keyword list. Number 3, we're going to optimize your podcast metadata. And number 4, we're going to use analytics to refine our process. Then we're going to rinse, and we're going to repeat. So let's dig deeper into this. Analyzing your competition. These are your direct competitors. These are the shows that are most similar to yours that a new listener might choose to listen to. It's kind of like being at a restaurant, you're sitting down, you're looking at the menu, and they're like, do I want steak? Do I want fish? I don't know. Of the steaks, I'm going to go steak. All right, do I want the strip? Do I want the fillet? Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? Where it's your listeners. This is not like if you're in real estate and you're in commercial real estate. Don't worry about the residential real estate podcasts. If you're in podcasting, I'm not concerned about the industry or the tech-related podcasts. I'm concerned about the podcasts that are out there talking to the exact person that I want to reach, which is business owners who are trying to grow their business and using podcasting as one platform to do it. So the shows that are most similar to yours that a listener could choose from their menu to listen to. You want to pay attention to active podcasts. Now, this might seem obvious. Active podcasts are going to be more likely to be clicked, but this also matters because Spotify wants to know that your feed is active. And when it comes to search, this is really important because they will prioritize those with active feeds who have published an episode in the last 15 days. They will prioritize that in search. You also don't want to discount inactive podcasts, though, because if a listener can still find it and that content is evergreen, then it will still be relevant to your listener. They might be less likely to click if they click in and they say, well, this show hasn't published an episode since 2022, but if it's evergreen content or if it's a limited series podcast, which is meant to be a capsule podcast, it literally is the 8 episodes that it is or the 10 episodes that it is, then you want to pay attention to that as well. So consider this. These are things to have in the back of your mind as you are analyzing your competition. Then you're going to go to ChatGPT. At ChatGPT, none of us knew that ChatGPT would literally become our best friend. but I go to ChatGPT for everything now. And ChatGPT is also going to help you figure out what are the keywords that those shows are using, that those competitor shows are using. This is the prompt you're going to type in. You're going to take the link to that podcast from, I like the Apple Podcast link. Chat, give me the 10 most optimized SEO keywords and the metadata of this podcast using data only from this link. And what it's going to do is it's going to skim the metadata of that podcast, and then it's going to give you the 10 keywords that are appearing most frequently in the metadata of that podcast. Now, this doesn't mean those are good keywords for you to go after. That's going to come in the next step. We're going to vet those keywords and make sure they're actually relevant for your show. But this is going to help you start flushing out keywords that are being used in other podcasts related to your topic, related to your niche. You with me so far? Cool. All right. So from there, you're going to have flushed this list out. You know, I recommend doing this with about 7 to 10 of your top competitor shows. So at this point, you've got a list of about 70 to 100 keywords. We're not going to optimize for all those. That's a lot. But what I want you to notice is which keywords are appearing the most often. Like, I love to pop them in a spreadsheet, sort them alphabetically, which ones are appearing the most often, which ones are appearing once maybe, it's kind of obscure, which ones are kind of unrelated. You're going to easily be able to kind of just disregard some of the keywords that are popping up. But what you really want to pay attention to here is relevance. Relevance, okay? What do I mean by relevance? Relevance comes down to listener intent. So this takes a little bit of intuition, but then also a little bit of research. And we're going to kind of combine those two, the art and the science of figuring out what keywords of these will be relevant to my show. So relevance simply means it matches what your audience is already searching. And then ideally, we want those keywords to be easy to rank for. We don't want to necessarily go after keywords that are going to be so competitive that it's going to be really difficult for you to show up in search results. But we want to find those, I call them the sweet spot keywords, that have high search volume, meaning that a lot of people are searching for this, but low competition, meaning that that might be a gap in the marketplace that you can fill. Because people are actually looking for this content. There's not a lot of content that's showing up under that particular keyword, and that is an opportunity for you. So let's talk about keywords here for a minute, because it's really easy at this point to say, okay, I've got a podcast about podcasting, so therefore podcasting should be one of my keywords. And yes, maybe it should, but also podcasting is a very highly competitive keyword. It's highly searched, but it's also highly competitive. Now, if that's the case and you want to go after a broad keyword like that, be my guest. You're just going to have to utilize that keyword a lot in the written messaging of your podcast in order to get Apple and Spotify to understand, that's what this podcast is about. It's going to be a bit harder to rank for. Whereas if you go too narrow, you're going to lose listeners that way too, because, let's say you have a mom who's looking for a fitness podcast, and you have a fitness podcast for moms specifically. It's not CrossFitters, it's not Pilates people, it's busy moms who need to just get like a quick workout into their day, okay? And that's your show. So if you go with the fitness podcast keyword, well, you might be popping up amongst who knows how many thousands of fitness podcasts that are out there. And so your listener might not necessarily be matched with exactly what they're looking for. If you go too narrow, fitness podcast for moms of toddlers, she's probably not typing that into the search bar. So we don't want to go too narrow. We don't want to go too broad. We want to look for those keywords that are somewhere in the middle and then check to see, is this actually being searched and how competitive is this keyword? So from here, there's a couple of tools that you can use to check the competition. ChatGPT is not going to be able to tell you this information. That's why ChatGPT is in step 1. In step 2, the human is actually going to step in and we're going to analyze. We're going to say, okay, are these keywords worth pursuing? And there's 2 tools that I love for this, okay? You can get a general sense of people searching across the internet for podcast cover art, for example, in this example here. You can look at the average monthly searches and see that between 1,000 and 10,000 people are searching that on an average basis across the internet at large, and the competition for that is pretty low. So I might flag that as a potential keyword to go after. Now, you can use a tool for this. There's lots of them out there. Most of them are free. I like Google Keyword Planner, but this has its limitations because it's going to show you what is across Google. What are people searching for across the internet? It's not necessarily going to show you what are people searching for inside of Apple and inside of Spotify. And that is why I love OSHA for this. Now, OSHA did not pay me to say this. I have just been a fan since day one because I've been teaching podcast SEO for 5+ years, but until now, we did not have a way to track it. We did not have a way to measure it, to actually see, are all these efforts that I'm putting into using keywords on my podcast actually working? So what OSHA can show you is to see, okay, Apple Podcast, here's the number of search volume, like people are actually searching this keyword. Here's how difficult that keyword is to rank for. And it literally shows you this taking place in Apple and in Spotify based on the country that you are ultimately looking to rank in. And so it's a lot more targeted and a lot more accurate. So based on where you are in your podcasting journey, if you are serious about your podcast, having a tool like this in your tool belt is going to do you huge favors when it comes to optimizing for your podcast SEO. If you're not there yet, that's okay. Get a general sense or as close as you can with free tools that are available to you. So from here, we've narrowed down our keyword list. We understand relevance. We've vetted those keywords to know, okay, which ones have high search volume, which ones have low competition. Your goal is to narrow that into a list of about 10 to 15 keywords that you can frequently and consistently use in your podcast when relevant. So for me, podcasting is a keyword that I use a lot. So is podcast marketing. Now, those are pretty applicable to most of my episodes. I can generally naturally work one of those or two of those keywords in pretty much every episode title, show notes, you name it. There are other keywords that are a little bit more specific, like video podcasting. And you might notice the same with your show as well, where you're like, okay, some of these keywords I'm not going to be able to use in every single episode, and that's okay, but it's a good keyword for me to go after, and maybe this is something that I need to be talking about more on my show because people are looking for this content. It's relevant to my listeners, and that's a gap in the market that I can fill, so you better believe that I'm using video podcasting anytime I have someone talking about video podcasting on the show because I want those specific episodes to show up for my listeners. So, if at your next podcast conference, you want to sound really smart, you want to meet some new friends, just go up to them and be like, so hey, do you optimize your podcast metadata? No, I'm kidding, don't do that. You might get some weird stares. But anyway, podcast metadata, all that it means is the written messaging of your podcast. You've heard me say that a couple times this morning. It just refers to the written content. Now, different apps prioritize different aspects of your written messaging in your podcast, but where you really want to make sure that you're using your keywords, because both Apple and Spotify prioritize for this, is in your podcast title and your episode titles. So let's say you find a keyword and you're like, okay, podcast title. My podcast title does not have that keyword in it. What do? You can add a tagline that's keyword rich in the name field of the podcast, so you don't necessarily have to rename your podcast. You definitely want to work those keywords into your episode titles when relevant, and of course your podcast description, episode descriptions, your show notes, and talk about it in your episode too, because the transcripts are going to auto-populate and it's going to pick up on those keywords. So you get in the habit of doing this, and this is inevitably, it begs the question. I get this question sometimes after I share this information, and someone says, well, shouldn't I just put every keyword in the title then, if that's really how we kind of game the system here? No, you don't want to do that, because Apple and Spotify, just like Google, frown on what we call keyword stuffing, which is the intentional stuffing of keywords into sentences and titles where they don't belong. So don't do that. It's going to hurt you in the long run. But essentially from there, you get in the habit of using these keywords across your podcast, and you want to stay on top of your strategy. This is going to take you a couple of hours of upfront legwork, and then from there, you're going to just be able to monitor this with a few minutes each week. And so what I like to do, I use OSHA for this, and I love to log in and see exactly what keywords I'm ranking for, what position I'm ranking for, who am I ranking against, in what player and in what country. Literally click of a button, it will show you. And it can guide your strategy, and it will show you, okay, this podcast keyword or not this podcast keyword, but this keyword appears, over 1,000 times in your metadata, and you're ranking number 6. And I want to be number 3. So I will know to use that keyword more frequently in my written messaging. Now, if I'm ranking number 1 for something, then it's like, okay, I'm doing pretty good there. Let me make sure that I keep the pulse on this and maintain that ranking. And so you can use these analytics to adjust your strategy. Now, again, I understand this is a paid tool. Not everyone is there yet. So the free way to do this is to simply, after a month or so of optimizing your metadata, go into Apple and go into Spotify and type your 10 to 15 keywords into the players and see if you appear. Now, obviously it's not as targeted, but in your country, when you open that up, whatever country you're in, it's going to show you that country, and it'll show you who is ranking. And if you're ranking there, great. That means that your keyword strategy is starting to pay off. If you're not ranking there, it can be an indicator that maybe you want to use that keyword more frequently in your written content. All right, this is a slide. Nobody saw that. All right, this is the slide. Whoa, let's see, where are we here? Oh, I lost the battery. Thank you, 2 batteries. You guys, at least one of us has energy on stage today, huh? Where are we? we are here. This is the slide that you're going to want to take a picture of or just scan that. This is going to give you, thank you. This is going to give you access to the slide deck, but also to a roadmap that I've put together for you because we only have 20 minutes here this morning. I just gave you a lot of stuff that you're probably like, I want to do this. I don't know how to do this. This is a lot of information. This is day 3 of the conference. You're ready to go home. I know you're tired. Take this, take the roadmap, block a morning off at a coffee shop or somewhere where you can just like grab your laptop, grab a latte or whatever type of coffee you like, tea, sit down, knock this out, okay? That's gonna literally walk you through this strategy for your podcast. But one thing that I wanna leave you with here is that right now, PSO is new to podcasting. Maybe not to some of us who've been doing this a while, but this is something that's relatively new in terms of a new organic strategy for you to be applying to your show. But it's not gonna stay that way. So I urge you, if you take nothing else away from this conference, go home and implement this. We saw over 41% increase in downloads in our show in 1 month with this strategy alone, podcast SEO. There was no other marketing that we were doing at that time. And we've continued to grow 16% on average month over month just through this strategy. So anything that you layer on top of there is going to be just gravy, icing on the cake, whatever metaphor you want. But there is a difference between knowing how to get your show seen and knowing how to earn the click, knowing how to actually get listeners to click. And lucky for you, I have an entire podcast dedicated to helping you do that. So again, this is my show, Insider Secrets to a Top 100 Podcast. You guys, thank you for being here today. I know it's day 3, you're tired, there's a lot of information going on in here, your head's about to explode, but I appreciate it. I'm gonna take questions over here on the side. Again, if there's any other strategy that you implement, let it be this. Thank you.